Hello everybody, welcome back to Theje's Notebook Review. I'm your host Joel Michael. What I have for you today is from Acer. This is the Nitro 5. What's new about this model for 2021 is, well, just the CPU. It's Intel's 11th gen Core i5, but I was finally able to get this notebook at a price of only $750 from Best Buy, which I figured was a neat little deal after having reviewed the identically equipped Lenovo IdeaPad Gaming 3i for $715. So, why does this Acer cost just a little more? Let's see if we can find out. This then is the Acer Nitro 5. It has the Intel Core i5 11400H CPU with a whopping 6 cores, 12 threads that clocks 12 megs of L3 cache up to 4.5 GHz. Mated to that is the weakest of Nvidia's GTX series, the 1650 with 4 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM. 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, cache it up, and 256 gigs of NVMe SSD, store it up. And then a 15.6-inch 144 Hz IPS panel lets you see what you're doing. In order to keep it running without an electric leash is a 48 watt-hour battery, pretty much the smallest battery you'll find on a gaming notebook. All told, it weighs about 5 pounds, which is by no means light, and hits that perfect sweet spot between manageable and my Uncle Gavin's dinner plate. For scale, the MSI GE66 I just reviewed is noticeably more hefty than this. Some Acer notebooks I've reviewed in the past have shipped with an obvious space for an extra 2.5-inch hard drive, but no caddy or connector. The Nitro 5 comes with all you need to throw in an extra drive. There might be a video in the near future where I explain how to install it. The AC adapter can have a Light-On or Acer badge depending on your luck roll, and has a decent 5-foot cable with a 3-foot from the wall cord. 8 feet of total distance from an outlet is plenty, but if you've got some pocket change left over, getting a 6-foot from the wall cord is never a bad idea. I caught this unit on sale for just over $800 after combining it with another 8GB stick of memory and 512GB SSD. That's the price I'm going to quote because you definitely don't want to be stuck with just 8GB of RAM and only 256 gigs for your money-making stock options figures and cryptocurrency reserves. Just kidding, we all know what this is for. And yes, it's available with more better things, but who cares? You're not going to spend $1,100 on an Acer with an RTX 3050 Ti when you can get a gigabyte with an RTX 3060 for the same price. As for battery life, Acer has a serious problem with software and managing power consumption. Getting this thing to have long battery life is tricky, and you have to press all the right buttons. Regular out-of-the-box settings will drain the battery in 2 hours tops, but if you set Nitro Sense to Power Saver, Windows to Power Saver, NVIDIA Control Panel to Integrated Graphics, the refresh rate to 60Hz, and maximum CPU power to 60%, you'll get 6.5 hours of internet work use. Now, say you want to plug in and game. Well, guess what? You have to undo all that crap. Try not to forget anything. Let's see what all those holes in the side do. On the right is Thunderbolt 4, USB 3, HDMI, and an exhaust. On the back we see the DC in flanked by 2 rather stylish exhausts, and on the left is another exhaust, gigabit LAN, 2 more USB 3.0s for a total of 3 standard USBs, and the headset in. It's missing a card reader, but it has freaking Thunderbolt 4. That's pretty awesome. Whether or not it goes full speed, what do you care? You're gonna throw an external GPU on this thing that costs as much as the notebook itself? You might be missing out on a card reader, but hey, it's got a LAN port! Leave a comment below if you're excited to see a LAN port on an Acer Nitro 5 with a GTX 1650. I dare you. The top of the case is covered in smooth plastic, aside for the crooked ditches carved into it. I suppose it's better than nothing. When I picture the top of the notebook without them, it might feel like something is missing, but this? It also likes to put your finger oil on display. Not fingerprints per se, but definitely oil. Underneath the display, the palm rest is made of the same plastic as is the touchpad. It will showcase your skin excretions all the same, and it will certainly beg for cleaning. The keyboard keys are rather coarse in comparison, and are a little more forgiving as far as getting stained, but they're still not invincible. Having a cloth handy would not be a bad idea. A big gripe I have about the body are the sharp edges on the very corner. Sure, your hands don't rub up against this spot very often, but it's still an oversight and should not have happened. The rest of the build quality is a little better than average, nothing really stands out as cheap. I also want to give props to the display, which is quite rigid and doesn't wobble at all while I'm typing. The bottom cover is fastened by 11 screws, all the same size, so you don't have to worry about leaving yourself a diagram. Inside we see the caddy I mentioned earlier, the NVMe SSD, 2 memory slots, and another NVMe SSD slot. The screw placement indicates that this can be a full-sized NVMe SSD, and it should be easy to install. Having 2 PCIe slots in a notebook this cheap is an absolute godsend, and that alone makes this notebook worth it to a lot more people, especially given the price. Acer has to do something really nasty to mess it up for itself at this point. Let's hope the rest of the notebook passes the test. The keyboard on the Nitro 5 is pretty good. I enjoy typing on it. I wish the keys had more of a soft edge to them, but that's being super picky. Overall, the action is good, predictable, doesn't take long to get used to, and doesn't throw any surprises my way, except that I hit the Nitro key every once in a while instead of backspace. That's kind of very annoying. The rest of the 10-key numpad is a fine addition, and sure it's a little short and the 0 key isn't double wide, but it works. Most of the typing sound is absorbed by the chassis, so you're left with very little noise pollution, if any. I remember in the past I've complained about the narrowed tilde key, so if you type with the numbers on top of the QWERTY keys a lot, it might take more getting used to than I'm letting on. The red backlight is a hit and a miss. I appreciate that it's there and has 4 brightness levels, but I'm not a fan of how the keys are red along the side. It looks okay at the lowest setting, but anything above that is just too much backlight and is just plain tacky. The touchpad is fine, motion tracks well by default and does click firmly at the bottom. However, it's placed into the body a little too deep and thus feels a little wonky on the right clicks. Cheap touchpads sink very far and your fingers feel that extra little bit of edge on the rim of the touchpad. That same gap is here, but only because the touchpad itself is sitting lower. In other news, it can be disabled with a hotkey, but doesn't get in my way while typing, so I haven't been compelled to disable it yet. If there is a way to disable it automatically when I plug in a mouse, I haven't figured out how to do it yet in Windows 11. The display on the Nitro 5 has to be fantastic, right? It is 144 Hz after all, which is much better than the 120 Hz monitors reserved for peasants. Well, allow me to violently thrust thee from thou highest of horses. Ghosting is still a very real problem here, and so is the long response time. That's not to say it feels sluggish, just a little less nimble is all. The monitor also doesn't get as bright as your average laptop, but where I said that it's an issue for the Lenovo IdeaPad Gaming 3i, it's not an issue here. It's just not that radiant. While colors pop less than the Lenovo laptop, media is still enjoyable to watch, and the matte screen won't let any reflections get in your way. Gradients are also very smooth on this display, which is a welcome sight for an Acer product, and the colors don't distort at an angle. While the brightness fades at a close angle, the screen tilts back very far, and it's easy to find a comfortable line of sight on your lap. Overall, it's a pretty good pixel container. Beats most 60Hz displays hands down, whether you're playing games or just browsing the web. Up next are the noise blasters. They're not terrible, and if expectations are kept low, then nothing will cause disappointment. The overall volume is maybe a little higher than average, and these speakers can fill a room, but you don't want them to, because max volume gets a little shrill. The sound is biased towards the treble range with a flat EQ, meaning that bass tones get dropped and background noises in movies stay in the background, which is a good thing. And when I say high volume gets shrill, I mean it's not crisp like a Lenovo laptop or robust like a Dell, it's annoying like an Acer. The bass in Calm Like a Bomb by Rage Against the Machine is very quiet, and the deep bass from A Perfect Circle's The Package is a whisper. The heavy guitar doesn't get lost in the mud, but the weak mids prevent it from popping. If it's all you've got at the moment and you can hear it well with the volume down to 70% or so, you'll be okay and it won't drive you crazy.
And here's a test of the webcam. I've got 10 LED lights in front of me here. I've got still another 11th LED light on this side of my pretty face. Color compensation is actually pretty good. Very grainy, the picture. 720p, as you can see, these white walls are very grainy, but I prefer this to throwing in extra red pixels, and you'll see this, especially pay attention to this black monitor in low light. You're going to see an absence of extra red pixels, which isn't half bad. Motion is, of course, very good in excellent lighting, and the color compensation as far as brightness is concerned. Let's see if it goes back to normal. Absolutely. I'm not overblown at all. Sometimes you will be, though, when you turn it on. So all you got to do is hold your hand out in front of the webcam and pull it away, and it should go back to normal. And here's a test of the webcam in poor lighting. All I have is this one lonely LED light on this side of my face. And still the color's very good. This side of my face is not overblown, and this side of my face is actually quite bright. Other laptop webcams, this side of me would be completely dark, and this side of me would be very much overblown. I'm very impressed with how this webcam is handling that, and like I said before, other laptop webcams like to throw in red pixels everywhere. This just amplifies the graininess to 11. You can see that on this monitor right here. That is so grainy. But I do greatly prefer this to other methods of color compensation.
This laptop was advertised as including Windows 11, but it ships with Windows 10 and offers to let you upgrade to 11 out of the box. I did upgrade to 11, and I gotta say, don't. Especially for laptops, all of the intricate power options and peripheral controls are 2 or 3 menus deeper than they were before. Why? Why move them now? Microsoft, you're fixing things that aren't broken. Just no. System performance of the Nitro 5 rivals pretty much everything else as far as normal use. The stock NVMe SSD reaches speeds of over 2 gigs a second and reads at 1.4 gigs a second. That's a bit faster than the Intel 660p, one of the only M.2 SSDs you can afford to put in that second PCIe slot. And a Core i5 with 6 cores, 12 threads, and 12 megs of L3 cache? I'm tempted to try 4K video editing with this thing. I know it can definitely handle anything 1080p. Real competition in the CPU space means that you, the consumer, are winning, and winning big. On to gaming. How well does the Nvidia GTX 1650 round out this package of wannabe high-end whatever? Well, by being another wannabe high-end whatever, naturally. There's not really anything this laptop can't play, as long as, again, those expectations are kept low. When I stuck with the settings that every game sunk into by default, I was perfectly content to truck along at those settings for the most part. Control was the only game that defaulted to medium and ran at about 40 FPS out of the gate. But Control is in its own special little world since software like Forza Horizon Full Woke Edition looks stunning and runs great at high details, and games like Witcher 3 and Doom Eternal also run perfectly well in medium-high details. That is, they reach about 60 FPS or slightly above. Yes, the Nitro 5 has a 144Hz panel and it does much better to show 60 FPS than most 60Hz laptops. You just have to appreciate it for what it can do, not for what it promises. Otherwise, you're in for a world of emotional pain. The Core i5 in this laptop stays remarkably cool, and the bottom of the laptop gets pretty warm, but not even uncomfortably so during a long gaming session. The fan noise is also kept to a minimum and will never overpower the speakers. And if you're going to game on battery power, do this one thing first. Stop. Plug it in. For the bottom line, what good is the Acer Nitro 5? What role can it fill? The answer is yes. It can literally do all the things. With a fast enough CPU, a dedicated GPU, 2 PCIe slots, a slot for a 2.5-inch drive, a high refresh rate panel, a battery, speakers, a webcam on top of the display, Thunderbolt 4, there's nothing that it can't do. And all for about $850 after the necessary memory and disk expansions. It doesn't do all things great. Okay, it doesn't do anything great, but it works and it won't let you down. In conclusion, students get a thumbs up and a peace sign from the other hand, which is better than nothing, but not as good as a thumbs up. It's cheap, has a full keyboard and webcam that's plenty competent. It's also heavy, and the decent battery life is not easy to come by and detracts from the rest of the user experience. It's also infinitely better than the Lenovo IdeaPad Gaming 3i simply because it's not a byproduct of the CCP. Yay, Taiwan! Casual gamers should already be watching this video on an Acer Nitro 5. This was built for you, and if you do anything other than game, like literally anything else, it'll do that too. Competitive gamers will absolutely need an external monitor. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you game on the 15.6-inch pixel array, you're being held back. Use the damn HDMI port. Desktop replacement users, this is your jam. Shove a bunch of memory in it, 3 SSDs, 2 displays, and you never have to look back at the stupid-ass red keyboard. You lucky bastard. Home users will get sick of this keyboard really fast. There are way more practical machines you can use to keep up with Instagram so that you know when the 7th booster shot will be available. Plus, it's heavy. Rawr. This has been a review of the Acer Nitro 5 here on Theje's Notebook Review. If you like the review, you should subscribe for a chance to have $1 million. Because honestly, everyone has a chance to have $1 million. Will subscribing to my channel increase these chances? Probably not, but could you be a millionaire eventually? Maybe. So subscribe, man! Get it? That's fine. Neither do I. Thanks for watching, and you guys, have a good night.